And Chad, we can move forward to the next slide. Perfect. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Only the panelists are going to be displayed or heard, but we do want to hear from you. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll try to answer them as we go if possible, but we will leave room for Q&A towards the end. Important point though, please enter your questions using the Q&A button in your Zoom panel, not in the chat. If they get put in the chat, we won't see them very easily. And yes, we will share both a recording and a slide deck of the presentation as soon as possible this afternoon after the presentation. My name is Raquel Cloyd, and I manage business development and partnerships here at Intellect. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Chad Smith. Chad is an expert consultant at CI Solutions, an ASQ fellow, and Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. He has 27 years of experience in continuous improvement across a variety of industries, including work at Ernst & Young, Tyson, Anheuser-Busch, SpaceX, Black & Decker, and more. He's held several leadership positions within ASQ, including past chair of the Black Belt Exam Review Committee and ASQ's Six Sigma Forum Advisory Council. Before we hear from Chad, I wanted to mention that today's webinar is co-sponsored by a partner of ours, Pinpoint Info Systems. Pinpoint offers manufacturing execution system software. Warren Andrade is the COO of Pinpoint, and he's here to tell us a little bit more about their solution.
Thanks, Raquel. Hi, everyone. As Raquel said, my name is Warren Andrade. A little bit about Pinpoint. So we are in the business of helping our customers improve quality and efficiency. We're an MES solution, which means manufacturing execution system. If you're not familiar with that term, it's okay. You can think of us as a comprehensive plant floor management system. We're a little unique in this space because our product is no code and it works right out of the box. Additionally, it's a very active plant floor management system with a strong focus on both quality and eliminating waste. But the byproduct of our system, which may be one of the most important things and very relevant actually to today's discussion, is the unbiased and the revolutionary data set that will help you transform your lean and continuous improvement efforts. We have a proven approach that has delivered gains faster than anybody else, and we've been doing this for over 27 years with small and big manufacturers, and improving plant performance is all we do. Thank you.
All right, a little bit about Intellect for those of you who are not familiar. We are an award-winning quality management and environmental health and safety software company built on a no-code platform and powered by a robust AI integration. We help companies to automate quality processes, prepare for audits, and achieve their quality and compliance goals. Those goals include compliance with ISO, FDA, GXP, EPA, OSHA, and more. Med device, aerospace, biotech, automotive, general manufacturing. A lot of industries rely on Intellect. They use our 30+ pre-built QMS applications that are ready to use out of the box, or you can build custom applications with our no-code platform. If you'd like to see a demo of our QMS at any point after this webinar today, simply type in Intellect demo into the Q&A portion, or if you'd like to see a demo of Pinpoint, you can type in Pinpoint demo, and one of us will reach out to you after the session. All right, Chad, I will hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Raquel. Thank you, Warren. Appreciate it. It's my pleasure to be here today. I get pretty passionate about data quality. And so when you guys asked me to do this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. And Warren, as we met through the relationship through Intellect, I got very excited about how what you guys do actually help us overcome some of the challenges we're going to talk about in regards to measurement systems today. So super excited about that. Just to give you a thumbnail sketch of CI Solutions, we're a boutique firm based out of Northwest Arkansas, but we're all over the U.S. in terms of locale for our folks, but we serve all around the globe. Why do we do what we do? It's very much missional, and you need to know this essence about us, and this is really why I'm here today, to be perfectly blunt. At our core, like you guys out there in the field, you see people that are, man, they're stuck in bad process. They're kind of downtrodden, and you just want to help them. And what's interesting about our work and about the elements we do, we go out every day, and those people that are kind of downtrodden and taking that with them, everything from the C-suite all the way to the front lines, we go out and deliver doses of hope to people stuck in bad process. And so that's the reason I'm here today. I hope that throughout this presentation, that for each one of you, you can find that nugget today that you can take back with you. It's a little bit of hope, a little bit of a to-do to kind of get you out of a rough spot potentially, or just a challenge that you're having. Maybe today's session is exactly that spark you need to go out there and get after it. Also, for CI Solutions, we very much believe in this idea of give it and you'll get it. That's what GI squared is all about for us internally. For us, we want to give it freely. We don't ever worry about the getting it part. My contact's going to be at the back end of this presentation, and I'm delighted to hear from people. Love to help people. Text is a great way to get a hold of me. I'm also going to share my LinkedIn information as well as my email. Don't ever hesitate to reach out there. To reach out to me and my team. We say this: we don't want people to suffer in silence, but definitely we want to give it first. And I've had a lot of people in my career that have done that for me, and that's really the posture for today. I just want to try to give back a little bit of that to you. We serve lots of organizations. You can take a look up here. There's probably some familiar names for you. Interestingly enough, all these folks have really they really dive in every day trying to drive continuous improvement, and that's the thing that I love to highlight, because it's not that we're so special that we get to serve these organizations. It's actually these organizations are very special because they're the ones that say yes to making tomorrow better than today, and to really begin to drive that kind of internal focus of just getting through it. For those of you that are aviation buffs, let me know. I'd love to talk after the session. That airplane at the bottom is actually the one I fly around these days. But my dad and I went up to Footville, Ohio on a Friday evening, picked up that thing that's on the trailer up there, and rebuilt it over a year and a half, and actually got it recertified, FAA requirements and all that kind of good stuff. And yes, it does fly. So, anyways, that's called a Bay King Goose, by the way. But my normal plane that I love to fly, old Grumman Tiger, the best technology 1976 had to offer. Musician. So if you want to share some tips or tricks, or maybe we can put together a band the next time we see each other. Love to play music. Was involved with a cover band called Got It Covered there for 9 years, right up to the pandemic. So, but still play saxophone. And no, I don't sing. That's a good thing, right? Don't give me a microphone. So, anyways, I'm a goofball, but yeah, not a good vocalist. There you have it. This is the reason I get up every day. My wife over on the left-hand side, she puts up with me every day. I'm kind of a wild hair, and she has been with me for a long time. In fact, May 12th this year, we'll celebrate 34 years since our first date. And I'd like to say we started dating in elementary school. It's not true. We did start dating in high school, though. We are high school sweethearts. But yeah, we're going to celebrate our 30th anniversary in May. Super excited. Our daughter there's in the middle. She is a saxophonist as well. She's a sophomore in college, 19 years old, actually thinking about going into environmental science. That's kind of where her career path is directing her right now. By the way, what she's holding there is, if you're ever in St. Louis, stop by a saxophone store called Sax Quest. They have a museum upstairs. That's a legit 1865 Adolph Sax made saxophone. It was in the museum. The curator of the museum kind of took a liking to my daughter and said, "Here, do you want to hold it?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, yes." So there she is. On the right-hand side here, this is my son. He's adopted. Super cool kid. He is the baller of the family. He's got Marshallese roots. We adopted him from birth. So if you know of the Marshall Islands, man, the Marshall Islands are way down in the South Pacific. Anyways, we have a little bit of touch of the islands there. Loves to play basketball. He's got a pretty good vertical. I mean, look at that kid. He's getting after it. That three, by the way, won the game, so that was pretty fun. Anyways, yeah, that's a little bit about me. I think it's good to get to know us. I wish I could get to know each one of you. That's really why I do this work every day. That doses of hope. You got to really spend time to get to know people. But we're going to make some assumptions about the audience as a whole today. Specifically, we're going to first get it out of the way. First things out of the first rattle out of the box. We're going to talk about measurements and why should we care. In the days of just data everywhere, why do we care about measurements? I mean, we've got data, whatever, we got all this stuff, it's fine. We're going to also talk about measurement, though, as a lens. We're going to talk about the components then of variation and talk about how those things are kind of parsed out and remind ourselves, for those of us that are in metrology, remind ourselves of the elements. So probably I'll be just refreshing things for some. For some of you, it might be new. Maybe you haven't considered it that way before. And then we're going to round out the presentation today, which is exactly what I hope are some doses of hope. We're going to talk about some strategies to drive improvement and summarize what we talked about. So that's where we're going. I'll be watching the time. I'm driving the bus today. So what I ask you guys to do is sit down, enjoy the view outside the windows, and yeah, we're going to go on a little tour. So let's talk about measurements. Why do we care? Right? Why do we care? And how do measurement systems also affect data quality, right? So it's kind of important. So measurements, why do we care? Let's start with and you guys will have to answer this. You can chat about it. Of course, the Q&A panel is an excellent place to put questions as they pop into your mind. The folks at Intellect are monitoring that channel, so it's really good for us to start getting some of those questions coming in the Q&A panel for sure. And we'll have some time at the end to address some of those. And actually, Raquel may jump in from time to time with questions if we've got some that are topical in the moment. I've asked her to definitely interrupt us and so we can have a good conversation. But let's first start this, and you can chat this, you can put it in the Q&A, whatever. Decisions. How many decisions do you make per week? And think about it. Like, just think about a normal day. Like, okay, well, I've got to decide, can I ship this? Do I receive this? I've got to decide, did that meet the standard? How were we in compliance with the cycle times? Are we running at right rate? Are all these sort of things, right? How many do we meet? Do we approve that PO? Do we approve this vendor request? Do we approve vacation request? Like, think about the HR stuff even. Rejections. How many rejections do you have per month? I get an email in response to a request for a report. The report's not what I needed. I send an email back. Parts come in, we measure them. Nope, they're bad. Send them back. Non-conforming material, whatever. Right? Trigger the rejection process. And even this, think about your team, think about yourself. How many disagreements do you have per year with others involving data? Right? So if you think about those disagreements, right? Supplier says good, we say bad, conflict, right? Somebody runs a report, we run a report, data doesn't match, conflict. These are all the roots of measurement system problems, right? So we've got these issues with maybe the way we characterize or measure or define what we might term as an operational definition. We've got different ways that we accept or reject things, different perspectives. Heck, even in our teams, we might be measuring attributes and find out that across our teams, we have disagreement. And anyways, it's a pretty big deal. Look at this. Of 18,000 firms in a 2010 census report, 32% at that time, this was 2010, so this is a long time ago. Now, this is the most current data that I could reach out there and grab. 32% at the time reported intense use of data, and I would claim that it's probably double that by now. It's a big deal. Like, we use data all the time, and very rarely do we consider the essence of good measurement systems. And one of the things I want to point out is all of us on the call, I would assume, are great leaders, or we're aspiring to become better leaders. That's possible. But here's the deal. If you want to be a better leader, one of the things you need to take away from this is you need to make decisions with the most information there is. The trouble is, how do we know the data is reliable? And so this is the whole crux of the presentation. Again, measurements, why do we care? We've got to care about reliability, because if we use unreliable data, we're going to expose ourselves to some risk, right? We're going to make bad decisions. And in fact, those bad decisions are likely to cost us money, right? We're going to accept something that should have been rejected. We're going to reject something that should have been accepted. And we're going to run around chasing our tail to try to figure out what the true state of nature really is. Right? So that's the trouble. That's the trouble with measurements, and that is why we care. So Warren Buffett cares, and unfortunately, Charlie Munger just passed. Warren Buffett's right hand man. But I love this statement by Warren Buffett. I've used it for years. I think it's a really good statement. that speaks to one of the reasons why we care, and also how measurement systems affect data quality for sure. Look at what Warren says. He said this in the 2010 annual report for Berkshire Hathaway. Charlie Munger and I believe that those entrusted with the handling of funds of others should establish performance goals at the onset of their stewardship. Lacking such standards, managements are tempted to shoot the arrow of performance and then to paint the bullseye around wherever it lands. What we're speaking about here is setting the right kind of targets. But honestly, if you don't have some idea about what the base level current state data is to begin with, how will you know where to set targets? So I think oftentimes with really cruddy measurement systems, this is kind of the management strategy for setting targets. I don't really know what the current state is, don't really believe that's what it is. So that performance on that line, that rate or whatever, the quality level, let's set the target here. How's that sound? And unfortunately for us, then it leads to this behavior of basically painting the target around wherever we land. And so on the left, some thoughts here. Without solid measurement systems and solid based data, managements won't be able to set reasonable targets, making success more of a game of chance. This builds apathy and a lack of trust. And I would love to explore apathy and the lack of trust, especially Deming's principle number 8. If you've read the book Out of the Crisis from 1985 lately, you know he talks about his 14 points in that book quite a lot. Well, those 14 points, one of them, my favorite one, is number 8, and that's drive out fear. If I don't have investment in the organization, I'm getting ready to run into trouble because basically apathy, it just breeds a lack of care, lack of trust, and before you know it, bad data can lead to that for sure. So Raquel, I know that we've got a question that we're going to bring up here and kind of get you guys engaged, get you plugged in. So Raquel, I'll turn it over to you and let you set up the question.
Great, thank you. We're going to launch a poll. You should see it on your screen. We would just like to know from you where at your company is plant floor data collected and stored. You may choose more than one option if it applies. Got our options are paper forms or checklists stored in binders, spreadsheets, maybe your ERP system. Maybe you have an MES system already and you store some data there, or a QMS system. Please, we'll take a few seconds to see where everyone's at their company with their data storage. And we've got about half of attendees who have answered the question. We'd love to get as close to 100% as possible.
Come on, let's go to 100%. Let's go. Give till it hurts.
All right, we've got about 3/4 of the way there. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't answered the question yet, please let us know.
Piling on.
And then we'll share the results as well, so you can see where everyone else is at here.
That's actually one of the things about process improvement I really like is that there's kind of a bit of, I don't know, solace in the fact of like, hey, other people are suffering from the same things I'm suffering from. This is crazy.
All right, well, we've
How
got
cool.
our results in. It's pretty almost evenly distributed amongst all the different options here. So definitely people are still using, paper, spreadsheets, more manual methods, but about half people do have an ERP that they use. About 28% do have an MES, and about half also have a QMS currently. We did get a comment in the chat that we didn't say offer process control database in the poll. So I guess that is another option as well. But thank you everyone for sharing your insights. All right, Chad.
Very, very cool. All right, sounds good. I love this kind of stuff where we get to see kind of real information about folks and the distribution thereof. So we're gonna kind of change our focus a little bit. So we've set the stage now. Why do we care about measurement systems and data quality and all that sort of stuff, right? I mean, we're using it to make decisions. And so if we're going to use it to make decisions, we better make sure it's reliable and robust and that we can get to it easily and trust it when we use it and so on. But let's talk about measurement as a lens. So if you think about a measurement system in general, and we're going to expand what you might think of as a measurement system, most people kind of tip the scale right away to a mic and a physical dimension, a ruler, a tape measure about the length of something, whatever, a pressure, right? Those are traditional measurement systems. We're going to stretch that just a little bit here in just a minute. But a measurement system functions as a practical lens through which we assess process performance, allowing for a clear and accurate view of key variables. However, if the lens is smudged or cloudy, inaccuracies may arise, hindering our ability to make informed decisions and identify areas for improvement in the manufacturing processes. We forget that all the stuff we put in place to measure, that we then use as the repository for information that we reach in and grab, pull back out, and tell what's going on, we forget that that is a system that is not perfect. In fact, if we think about it, we need glasses in manufacturing processes to see. Measurement systems then are those glasses that equip us to visualize our processes. And that's a critical thing that I think most leaders, like we kind of like, look, if I'm out on the plant floor and I'm a quality technician and I'm measuring attributes, I can absolutely see the connection, right? I've got a caliper and I'm measuring these parts coming out of a machining cell, and that's what I do, right? Making sure things are looking good. I think as we become leaders in the organization, middle level and upper level leaders, that sometimes we forget this, and we forget that all the data that we're getting from wherever, data warehouses, data lakes, Power BI, whatever it is, all that information that comes back has come in through a measurement system. And it comes in with all the qualities and goodness that exist inside the data. And it may not be very good sometimes, right? It may be based on averages, so we've got a lot of smoothing. It may be only looking at particular date ranges, excluding other date ranges we don't know. So yeah, it's actually a really big deal. So up and down our organization, there are tons of measurement systems. And this is a rhetorical question. We'd love this in the Q&A, or maybe in the chat. The Q&A will be preserved. What would you add to this list? Where are your smudges? But look at this list over here. There are some that I said we kind of expand our idea of measurement systems a little bit, right? I mean, I can measure flow, temperature, torque, some sort of a dimensional characteristic. But let's talk about hardness. Okay, well, that's a pretty traditional measurement, but how about attendance? Right? What's the operational definition for measuring attendance, and who reports on that daily? Or OEE, that's composed of three elements that are actually pretty complex in their own right, right? The percent rate of the equipment, so the published rate, what rate are we running? So if we're at a stamping press and we're supposed to, see 65 impressions a minute, and we're running today at 45 impressions a minute. Well, okay, that's a delta. We've got the percent uptime, so we scheduled a process to run for 40 hours this week. It's only made it 32 because of some maintenance downtime, some unplanned downtime. We got percent yield, right? So we measure the total number produced and the total good and calculate the percent yield. All three of those are incredibly complex and full of data sources in their own right that bubble up to this overall thing called OEE. My goodness, things like scrap cost. Think about the measurement system of scrap cost and all the things that feed into that. And we're going to get to some solutions in a little bit. But that's one of the things I was excited when we were talking to Warren and kind of getting to know each other. Insight does a really good job of, by the way, point of view storage of those. I didn't say Pinpoint, I should say. Pinpoint does a really good job right there at the plant level. Getting the things positioned so people can collect information that really reduce the variation. Let's talk about the types of variation that exist. All right, so you guys are familiar with the normal distribution probably, and there's some characteristics about probability inside of this. And when we think about distribution, when we think about the normal distribution and variation, well, it's anything that is anything that's not exactly according to the state of nature. So let's talk about this. Variation, when compared to an actual standard, indicates the natural differences or deviations in outcomes from what is expected or considered normal. That middle point is the true state of nature. We would assume that's the average. But when we take readings, right, when I go out and collect a dimensional characteristic, you know what, I tack a little bit on, maybe I don't capture enough. And so my numbers vary just based off of how the measurement system works. That's kind of the traditional measurement systems analysis that we're very familiar with. GR&R, right, for all practical purposes here. And we recognize that measurement systems basically add and subtract variation from the real reading. And so when we put on our glasses, they are not perfect and they may have smudges. In fact, we could actually break out the variation of processes into two areas first and foremost. We're going to kind of walk down through this one level at a time. The first level we'll talk about is just the function of the variation we see by looking through our glasses is composed of two things. One branch is what we want to see. That's the process, right? We want to see the variation that's actually occurring in the process. So as a machine runs and it's producing, say, parts, for instance, maybe we're in a machining center, it's blanking parts. There's a particular length characteristic, and that machine has a little bit of variation. So some parts are a little longer than others, and some are a little shorter than others, and so on. So there's a natural amount of process variation. That's what we want to see with our glasses. Trouble is, we also have measurement error, right, that causes trouble. It basically gets in the way of us seeing the real process variation. Measurement error can be composed of a few things itself. We're going to talk about the three on the right first, and then we'll move to the one on the left. But bias error is simply an offset. It's a naturally occurring offset. It's always added on or tacked on, right? So that bias error is something that's problematic. Linearity across the range. So I've got, say, a 0 to 10-inch caliper. I don't know, some big tool. And maybe it's good on the smaller end, but on the upper end, it's not good. Scales are a prime example of that. Actually, if you look at the internals of a scale and the way the measurement process of a digital scale, there's actually a curved profile, and across a particular range of it, it's within a plus or minus range, so it's good enough, right, in a particular range, but don't go beyond it, or when you get to the edges of it, it has trouble. Stability, right, that's over time. So a measurement system, like I'm here in an emissions testing company, and they use a lot of analyzers to analyze stack gas out of stationary power sources. That's where I'm at this week. And so those instruments, as they run throughout the day, they warm up, they cool down, that sort of thing. So stability of data across the day is a very important characteristic. And one of the things that, for instance, Air Hygiene, this company I'm with this week, one of the things they do is they maintain a constant temperature in a mobile laboratory with a very large, oversized air conditioning and heating system. And that's not done for creature comfort. That's done for analyzer comfort to improve stability. Those are kind of the basic characteristics. And that's more of the equipment or the measurement system itself. But there's also the measurement of people, right? Due to people's interface with the measuring tool itself. Now, I'm going to expand on this just in a minute. The measurement tool, remember, we've already introduced some weird ones like OEE as a measurement tool. You're like, I thought you were talking about a caliper. No, it could be OEE. It could be an attendance report. We're going to expand on that just a little bit more in just a minute. That measurement error, by the way, is composed of two things that humans do, and sometimes we do it poorly. One is within me. It's repeatability. It's the first time I measure something to the second time I measure something, right? So I don't do such a hot job. That's whatever. I'm inconsistent. Maybe my method is inconsistent, whatever. If you think about a fishbone diagram and all those different elements around there, one of those that's often associated with measurement error is methods, right? Of course, measurements is another branch of the fishbone in the traditional categories. But that repeatability, that's within. Between me and somebody else, now this gets tricky because we're going to expand this right away. In fact, we're going to see an example here in just a minute of like a report out of an ERP. When I set up the report and when my colleague sets up the report, do we use the same parameters? So there actually may be a reproducibility problem between people, right? And that may be associated with this operational definition, if you will. So yeah, so there's all kinds of interesting things about measurement systems that cloud the issue. Remember, they're both cloudy and smudgy. Right, our glasses, we can't see what's really going on. So again, from a dose of hope perspective, maybe one of the things that you start to see is that measurement systems are not just something that's out in the metrology lab, but maybe it's associated with all the places we collect information, how that information gets adjusted and manipulated to give us an understanding of what's going on with the process. If we can see, when we look into the process from out here, if we can see that this is basically, we've got a set of glasses that have lots of sources of variation, trying our best to get back here to the truth, what we really want are crystal clear glasses to wear so we can see in the process. If we can begin to understand that, we can start asking the right questions of data, of the data collection process, of the measurement system overall, and start getting us a little bit of a better perspective on what the real data is telling us, what's really going on out there in the world. So think about this, non-traditional measurement systems, measuring transactions. And again, from Pinpoint's perspective, their data collection sources are right out on the plant floor, right there where the frontline folks can put in good information. It makes it easy. It's point of use. It's right out there. So again, where those transactions are happening, we can get a little bit better timestamps. I love that because measuring transactions is challenging. Let's explore it. We talked about an ERP report. Let's just explore an SAP report for just a minute. Many of us deal with this anyways, and probably know some German as a result of some of the base level programming. Stability regarding SAP. When I run a report today, and I will run one later, say in a week or so, is the data stable? So maybe I'm trying to understand about order patterns. Is the data stable? When is the monthly reconciliation done? And when are the books finally done? So stability in data is actually a problem. It takes a little bit for data to become stable after it's first entered and collected and adjusted, and it takes a little while for it to become nice and stable. Reproducibility, we talked about this already on the previous couple slides. Just this idea that how do we define leader standard work so that we're running production reports, say, and that the way I do it is the same as the way somebody else does it. So you want to challenge these as leaders and as good continuous improvement practitioners. I encourage each one of you to go back and ask some good questions about, well, how are these reports generated and where is our standardization in the transactional side of the house, that when we run reports, we're doing it the same way. And maybe even it's within me. Maybe I need to consider myself or maybe somebody on my team that runs reports. It's like, well, why is it that you ran this report this month this way and last month you did it a different way? And we're comparing month to month results and I'm confused. Those are really important elements, right? So these, again, we talked about kind of that breakdown of the measurement system error. We want to see the process error with measurement system error. And we've got the measurement variation due to people, which is repeatability and reproducibility, right? And we've got bias and stability and linearity, right? All those sort of things kind of mixed in, right, that cloud the issue and make it hard to see what the real process variation is. Even hour by hour boards. I mean, this is another great one, right? So maybe we've got a bias issue, right? A bias error where an operational definition is not well defined. And so a first shift team is reporting it differently than a second shift team. It's just that the second shift team adds on break time in the total time, and the first shift team doesn't. There's lots of different things that we could consider how these work. So maybe we didn't do a very good job of training people, so we built in an arbitrary bias in the system. Reproducibility, right? Again, do all shifts fill it out the same? Repeatability of myself. Am I diligently reporting it at the same minute after every hour? Kind of looking at it. Do I do it 5 after the hour? Where do I get my information and where do I get it? And so where does it come in? So again, just those things. These are kind of weird measurement systems. You might have thought we'd be talking about really detailed CMM reports and GR&R associated with coordinate measurement machines using some advanced statistics and all that sort of stuff. I'll tell you, these are measurement systems that this is the real, and we make decisions based off of this information all day long, day in, day out, week in, week out. And where there's error, we make bad decisions. So we're about 10 minutes away from a Q&A, and we're going to kick around now some strategies to improve. As you kind of lean into your processes, as you lean into your measurement systems, one of the first things you need to do is, number one, identify areas of variation, but then be able to parse it out into its variation type. So this is an important thing because if you're going to develop a strategy, you need to know what you're up against. And so, for instance, if we are measuring, and some say sales and operations planning, maybe we're measuring forecast accuracy. Is there an arbitrary bias that exists where we've got some orders in that are, basically clouding the issue, and those orders have been in the system for a long time, but they've never been released to be produced. So it's a false signal or a false demand out there. Actually, Air Hygiene, the company I'm working with this week, that's one of the things that they've challenged. They had a lot of clients out there that had said, "Yeah, we're going to do work with you guys," but they'd never got on the schedule, and they'd never started the process of initiating that firm work schedule. So is it real demand or is it fake demand? And so they had to kind of go back through, and they found out a lot of those clients had fallen off the wayside, that they were no longer part of the portfolio. They were no longer going to need testing for whatever reason. And Air Hygiene wouldn't have known had they not asked. So that was arbitrarily biasing their numbers a little high. And you're like, well, this is S&OP. Like, what are we talking? Like, I thought we were here for metrology, right? Again, these are measurement systems that we deal with. Linearity is interesting because if you've got a linearity issue, you notice that at the high end of the range, maybe you're pretty good, but at the low end of the range, you're terrible. And it could be that you're building a prediction equation, and that your prediction equation is good for a particular range, but you're trying to use it to predict something down here. And so be careful with forecasting models, because oftentimes forecasting models get weird at the edges. Stability, we talked about data stability. That's a prime example of odd things out there. Data changes over time. Reproducibility, I want to know how people assess good or bad. We may have attribute measurement systems in our organization. Maybe it's in purchasing, where we're submitting, vendors are submitting vendor approval forms, right? And we're accepting or rejecting those, but we've got 2 or 3 different purchasing agents, and we all assess those vendor submissions in a different way. What? Yeah, that's right. You know what? We could have a traditional one out on the paint line. We assess paint defects, whether or not it's defective or enough or not. And we're assessing, right, the attributes characteristics, like, is it good or not? I mean, think about the pains we go through to define those different surfaces, the surfaces that are super important, the surfaces that are secondarily important, and those tertiary surfaces that are not as important, right? We can live with a little bit more variation. And then simply repeatability. That's my ability to be consistent, or somebody's ability to be consistent in terms of how we collect information, right? So you got to know what you're up against. That's the real key here. In addition, what, how often, and who? If I can't assess a measurement system's operational definition, if I don't see it, if it's not established as to how we measure something, then we have variation built into our process. That is absolutely true. I've got to deploy, and I've got to develop first and then deploy leader standard work that says, if we're going to measure OEE, here's how we go about it. And here are all the steps and the sources of data, and some of the essence. Maybe even there's a macro involved that compile a bunch of information together and bring it together in a final report, whatever it happens to be. But we've got to define it. And then we've got to train people to that known standard, right? If we've been able to identify the sources of variation and mitigate those, right? And then we've established the operational definition, how we're going to go measure. Now we need to go teach people and make sure that we're training to that standard. And it's super, super helpful if we've got those SOPs in places where we can get to them. And they're right there. In fact, that's one of the things when we're talking with Pinpoint, I hate to keep talking about it, but I really like it. It's like, it's good because they've got the information out there right at the user interface level. So again, as we think about strategies to improve, looking at innovation and trying to drive that information to where the information's used and needed is the most important thing we can do. So there are some recommendations here. If we're thinking about calibration and maintenance, and we're kind of going back to that data quality on the plant floor, if we're going to, first things first, go out there and ensure that our measurement systems are in good working order, calibrated, they're maintained often. That's really, really important. And standardizing the process, super important to build those SOPs and operational definitions that clearly define what to measure, how often to measure, and who should take the measurement. Train and develop those skills, right? The high quality training experiences that detail not only the how, but also the why behind the steps, show what can go wrong and establish why they should care. And this is an important piece. If you take away from this middle bar, this train and develop skill, go do a little research on training within industry. It's a really good routine that not only teaches people what to do, but why they're doing it. And then they get to learn the why, and they get to teach it back as part of this learning process. Super, super important to really think about that. Analyzing and providing feedback, building audits into leader standard work, for instance. Go check on the data. You as a leader, that's super important that you go do that. It's on you. Evaluating emerging trends each year and building a 1 to 5 year strategy. Look, you've got some great partners here. Intellect's here. I mean, you need to reach out to them and like go through some scenarios with them, see what's up, see if it can help you build that 5 year plan. You work with Pinpoint to think about that plant floor stuff, right? How we can improve that. Build it into your CapEx plan. Measurement systems are often neglected. They're kind of often thrown together at the last minute. They're often not well funded or not strategically funded, I would say. But I'm going to tell you where we started today's presentation at the beginning of this whole thing. Why do we care? It's because we make decisions based off of data. And if we've got cruddy data, we're going to make cruddy decisions. And so I will tell you that good leaders are going to do what it takes to improve their measurement systems to make sure they're ready for that next stage of the game, the next challenge out there. And I mean, we're all faced with big data these days. You'll hear presentations about big data and how, we've got so much data, it's okay. It'll work itself out in the wash. I'm not a believer of that. I've not been convinced of that yet. It's still on us to make sure, even though we've got lots of data, if we've got lots of garbage data, it's not going to help us at all. It's not going to do what we need to do for our business and not really going to make a difference in the ways that we need it to. Really flipping the cost of poor quality triangle is really important here, making sure that we fund prevention first to proactively fix issues, knowing that if we don't, what will result is the left-hand triangle. And I know Intellect had a webinar recently about cost of poor quality categories. Here they are, the 4. External costs, right? External failures are the worst, right? Because they get out to our customer. We have to deal with that, right? Internal, almost as bad. We've got our whole entire warehouse, ringed in red caution tape because we haven't released anything yet. Come on. That's no good, right? And appraisal costs. Oh, it's okay. We'll put a triple check or a quadruple check in there. It'll be fine. And prevention is suffering. Whereas really our strategy ought to be, if we fund prevention on the front end, it's going to help us do appraisal well, going to reduce the number of internal challenges we find, and our external failures will go down in a significant way. So in summary, as we kind of wrap this up, decisions, garbage in, garbage out, right? Variation, we've got to minimize that variation. We've got to have that mindset as leaders to ask questions about the sources of variation and not take data at face value. And regarding errors, all of our reporting systems, everything, it has error in it. That's just a fact. And as much good accounting as we would try to do, we still have error and noise in the data. So what do we do about it? Well, we begin to understand the sources of variation. We develop good standards to overcome those sources of variation and to try to drive consistency. And teaching, right? We show others how to measure. We don't leave it up to chance, right? We don't throw people into the middle of a process and just hope for the best. And so in that regard, we'll end with a quote here from Richard Branson. I love this. If you think about the opportunities around measurement systems and plant floor systems and data systems, right? Data sources, business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming. So just try your best to be as prepared as you can. It's been my delight today to be able to walk you guys through these topics and to work alongside both Intellect and Pinpoint. Super excited about their work and what they're doing out there to try to reduce the measurement system error. I'd love it if you could connect with me on LinkedIn. Continuous Improvement Solutions LLC is a great place. We're a boutique firm of 14 to 16 folks, depending on the month. We serve all around the world in all spaces of continuous improvement. Of course, Lean and Lean Six Sigma. We're ASQ Connects partners, so we've got access to all the stuff that ASQ brings. But even bigger than that, we help organizations install continuous improvement cultures. We love that. So bring us your challenge. We also like to become obsolete as fast as possible. Kind of goes back to that GI squared thing. We want to get information into people's heads and hearts and change their hearts and minds so that they can go do it and stand on their own 2 feet on their own and boot us out the back door as fast as possible. We love doing that kind of work. And I just want to give thanks again to the folks over at Intellect. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm extraordinarily grateful. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Raquel, and just really appreciate everybody. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Chad. I know we've got some questions from the audience to get to. We are going to get to those in a minute. This is your chance now. Please put into the Q&A portion of the Zoom panel any questions that you might have. And Chad, if you wouldn't mind forwarding one slide where we've got, again, this is where you can reach Chad, either the previous slide or this information here. There's a CI Solutions website. You can also contact Pinpoint, that information there, or if you like to contact Intellect to get a demo, you can either, again, put in Intellect demo into the Q&A portion or go to that link and we can get you scheduled at that point in time. So we're going to go ahead and head into our Q&A. If you have questions for Chad about anything he just talked about or questions about Pinpoint or Intellect, we can answer those here as well. We're going to get to as many as we can. First question, is there a blueprint for performing GR&R? This is for a small startup company. Most work is R&D for various other startup companies.
Now there is. I'm trying to think of a good resource for you. We may want to take their contact information. I'll get it back, or I can maybe you guys can broadcast that information. I know I've got some good texts. I don't have them in mind. Obviously, the library is pretty broad. So, of course, ASQ Greenbelt training covers gauge R&R in a really good and deep way. Measurement systems analysis too. If it were me and I was probably wanting to kind of get started, I'd probably jump out on YouTube, to be perfectly blunt, and identify a few videos to watch about those as well. In summary, I can give you a quick summary. You collect your samples. If you've got a variable measurement system, you collect about 10 samples that represent about 90% of the variation. You go out and challenge those samples with multiple operators. So you'll have operator 1 measure the set of 10 in a random order once. Operator 2 do the same. Operator 3 the same. They come back and they rinse and repeat. So operator 1 will do the first 10, or will do those 10 again, but in a different order, second and third. And then you use that data then to put into any software, Minitab being one of them. It's pretty common. You put that information into the software and you calculate some things. You begin to understand ratios of the measurement system variation or variance as composed to the total, or as compared to the total standard, total observed variation. So anyways, gets into some calculation routines. You got to hit the enter button and so on. There's also the AIAG Measurement Systems Guide, which I think is a good reference for base level measurement systems. That's where I learned so many years ago. So a long-winded answer. There's lots of sources, but I think we can get them a text of some kind that would be a good reference. And I just don't have one off the top of my head because there's so many swimming around in my head, Raquel. There you go.
Okay, no problem. Well, again, you have Chad's contact information if you'd like to reach
out.
out to him. Definitely. Next question. What's the difference between measurement systems and our KPIs? KPIs being key performance indicators.
Yeah, I think that this is an important question. KPIs, key performance indicators, are different. Okay, so they're different than what I would call strategy deployment measures. So if you're practicing policy deployment or Hoshin-Conry strategy deployment, those are typically associated with breakthrough measurements, right? Those measurements that measure progress toward breakthrough success. KPIs are more like daily management items. When I think about it, it's just like any other measurement system. If I'm measuring percent margin on products, right? Percent margin, that's based off of information, and all that information is collected in a system, and there's assumptions made and deductions made and additions made here and there. It's a measurement system. So very often we think of measurement systems very much in that metrology mindset, right? Out there physical, in the quality lab, measuring the part characteristics. And it's actually not. An extended measurement system goes all the way up into an organization. I've done a bunch of continuous improvement work in sales, and that's so far from the manufacturing floor, but they still have measurement system troubles. So yeah, it's crazy. So I would always think of anything that we're reporting or any data we're using as it came from a measurement system, and it's on us as leaders to know the sources of variation in that measurement system.
All right, thank you. Next question. Could you please describe more about leader standard work? What does that look like ideally?
So leader standard work really defines the work of a leader. So how am I going to go about as say a team lead. Let's say I'm a team lead out there in the front. And Warren, you may have something to add to this, some examples that you've seen also with Pinpoint. As a team lead, I have a routine that I ought to follow, right? If it's my accountability to measure our team's performance and to report on that every hour, how do I know what my standard work is? Well, I need to define that standard work, right? The just the steps, right? The steps. It may come with a single point lesson attached. Maybe it's how to get into the screens as a reminder to go put in information, say an electronic system like in an MES, for instance. But it really defines the work as a leader. So, what time do I go collect the information? What system do I go put the information in? Where can I go look up things that maybe my new employees need? Maybe they need to get on a training schedule. How do I get that scheduled? All those things that work as a leader, it defines my work. And I would tell you that even all the way up into vice president, president, CEO levels, that we all need leader standard work. A good lean operating system or lean production system, aka TPS, Toyota Production System, or any variation thereof, will have good leader standard work. Warren, is there anything else you'd like to add, maybe from that plant floor level?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like you said, out of the box, one of our capabilities is, work instructions. And right out of the box, you can configure the standard work elements that you want, and Pinpoint will enforce those standard work elements to be done. And you have to acknowledge that those things are done, and will actually provide a timestamp for how long each one of those elements of standard work took, and where there was variability, again, we're measuring that. And even when things go wrong that might create a defect or non-conformances, those all get tracked in the system. So you get complete traceability.
And one of the things you highlighted that I think is also really important of that leader standard work is that it's not only traceability, but it's also accountability. In
Yes.
other words, there is an absolute check. If I'm not doing my hour by hour boards until like later in the day, and I'm kind of going back and trying to remember what 3 or 4 hours ago was, like there are physical checks and audit points that we can see whether or not this leader conformed to the requirements or not. So it gets into error proofing, right? Poka-yoke, if you're familiar with that term from Japanese. So very good. Thanks for the help, Warren. Appreciate it.
All right, next question. We are merging international processes together. Regarding nonconformances, how do we quantify measurability with logistics and reduction in defect rates?
That's a challenge. I think there honestly needs to be a team activity built with representatives from both of those teams that come together and define what is acceptable and what is not. Those operational definitions I spoke about, I think those need to be worked through together in an environment, maybe even like if you did a rapid improvement event or a Kaizen event, that sort of scenario where the goal of that event is to establish the rules of the road that work around the globe. And that is a challenge because there's a lot of different global standards that exist. So you're going to have some folks in different parts of different locales that are under different regulations or whatever the local conditions are. They need to all bring that to the conversation. And then we need to decide as an organization, what is it? When we say this is it, this is either good, this is either bad, how do we define that? How do we know that we're consistent, right? How do we know that we're consistent? Years ago, there was a brewing process that I worked in where a brewery in one area and a brewmaster of the globe and another one, they had very different taste test results for beer, expert beer tasters between the different locations, even for the same beer. And so they asked questions like, well, is it the shipping? So how do we ship it? Is it chilled? Are the taste testers in different areas? Do they have different characteristics? How do we measure that? It became very complex and very complicated very quickly. But all those were sources of variation that we had to fish through one at a time and to begin understanding whether or not it was significant or it wasn't. And for those that weren't, well, we took those off the list, and those things that were are the things we drove improvements around. So it's a very important thing globally.
All right, thank you. Another question, how can you ensure reproducibility and repeatability when we're using paper and spreadsheets and there's a risk of human error?
This is hard. This is hard. I would say I would approach it from a continuous improvement aspect and ask questions like, well, where can I reduce the sources of variation by error proofing the processes, right? So how can I error-proof reporting? And when you've got spreadsheets and people are doing all kinds of analysis, and it's like we just really need to know what everybody's doing. So where we can, we error-proof, right? So prevent errors from occurring. In the absence of that, I think we do a lot of communication, a lot of training. And it's that act of calibration. You're like, well, calibration is something where we ship things off and it comes back with a sticker or whatever. No, this calibration is more getting people in a room and all agreeing. And I've used the term already, but it's a big deal in what we do in transactional processes. An operational definition becomes the standard by which we agree that this is how we're going to measure, and it becomes kind of that an essence of leader standard work, for lack of a better thing, that defines when we say something, what we mean by it. So there you go. It's
Yeah,
not
I'd
easy. I mean,
also
transactional process. Go ahead, jump in there, Raquel.
I would say I would also add that, that's where technology can help. So a QMS like Intellect or
Yes,
can help to automate those
absolutely.
processes and have notifications going out and making sure that things are followed according to, or
Well, and I
even
think that
training.
you mentioned the automation part of it. And I think that's a big piece of it. If it's repetitive tasks, I can reduce the variation of people by having a machine do it the same every single time. And I know for you guys have that built in Intellect, the way some of those tasks on the back end get taken care of. That drives consistency, right? If I've got one machine doing it that knows the same way every time, it's so much better, right? I can count on it. So that's a great point. Yes, definitely talk to Intellect. That's very important. So good.
Last question. How often should we audit our internal systems to ensure reliable data measurement?
Okay, so I wanted an answer like this early on in my quality career, and really influential leader in my life, Eileen Beachel. She retired as a chief statistician at Ford, and then was down in our little plant in Decatur, Arkansas, teaching us Lean Six Sigma so many years ago. I asked her questions like this, and she's like, "I don't know." She's like, "What's your risk?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, what's your risk?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know that." She said, "Well, if you don't know that, you need to assess it." She said, "You need to focus on the things that are likely to cause you the most trouble or cost you the most money." And so, regarding audit frequencies, that's how I really would think about it. I would really consider all of the things out there that we need to audit, or we need to keep our eyes on, or we need to go out and see, and prioritize those based off of the risk to our business. And this is a little dose of hope for all of you out there that are looking at all the measurement systems now that we've unpacked today. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just thought it was the metrology lab, and now you're telling me it's KPIs and everything. What? The thing I would tell you about this is you're in business currently and you're doing okay, right? You're doing all right. Like things are okay. Yes, we want to make tomorrow better than today. So let's go out and strategically improve the things that make the most sense. You don't have to do everything overnight. And so we're going to borrow one of the statements over from the lean side of the world. Don't let perfect get in the way of better. And as practitioners of the quality craft, most of us here are probably in that circle. Yeah, we tend to err on the perfect side, and we won't release it until it is perfect. Get out there and give it a go, right? Prioritize some things, start learning the sources of variation, audit where it makes sense, prioritize your work, prioritize your activities, go out there and proactively work to run the business like you own it. So there you go.
Well, thank you very much, Chad. We definitely appreciate all your insight today. Thank you, everyone, for attending and engaging in our polls, answering questions. We appreciate you being here. All
Thank you
right,
guys.
everyone, have
Really
a
very
great
grateful.
day. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. All
Thank you.
right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.